Hello everyone, my name is Katarzyna Waśkiewicz and this is my presentation on genetically altered foods, also known as genetically modified or engineered foods. The objectives of this presentation are to explore the concept of genetically modified foods, find out what are advantages and concerns related to GMO, and who regulates those foods. Also during the presentation, we will walk through the production of genetically modified crops in the United States and in the world. In the presentation, first I will define genetically altered foods. Second, I will explain why are organisms modified. Next, I will point out to some concerns about genetically modified foods and provide the information about the regulation of GMO. Lastly, we will explore the production of genetically engineered crops in the world and in the US. First, we need to start with what genetically modified organisms are. So, GMOs are organisms, plants, animals, or microorganisms in which DNA has been altered by adding a gene that will express a desirable trait, such as nutritional value, insect resistance, virus resistance, or herbicide tolerance. Every food containing GMO is referred to as genetically modified, genetically altered, genetically engineered, or biotech food. First, genetically modified food FDA approved and available on the US market was tomato. It was in 1994. This tomato had a new gene that prevented the breakdown of the tomato's cell walls, thus extending its shelf life. While there was no scientific concern over its safety, the tomato was removed from the market in 1998 due to consumer concerns. Today, about 60 to 70% of processed foods in the US contain a genetically modified ingredient. Cotton, corn, and soybeans are the most common genetically engineered crops in the United States. About 80 to 95% of these crops are genetically engineered. Genetically engineered crops and foods in the US are regulated by USDA, FDA, and EPA. The picture on the right explains the process of creating an insect-resistant tomato plant. Now let's look at some incentives to produce GMO, which are increased productivity that contributes to global food, feed and fiber security, increased durability, increased nutritional value, crop protection, such as insect-resistant plant, require less quantities of insecticides. Virus resistance gives higher crop yields. Herbicides tolerance allows for less herbicides being used. Also, economic incentives are very important. In the 21 years of commercialization of biotech crops, the United States accumulated $80.3 billion in economic benefits, and it was $7.3 billion in 2016 only. Globally, biotech crops gave $18.2 billion of the economic benefits in 2016. According to a meta-analysis of 147 studies on genetically engineered corn, soybean, and cotton, published in 2014, adoption of GM technology increased crop yields, reduced pesticide use, and increased farmer profits. You can see the details on the graph. What are concerns about genetically altered foods and who regulates these foods? People are concerned about human health and the environment in relation to GMO. Concerns for human health include potential to cause allergic reaction, gene transfer from GM foods to body cells, outcrossing where genes from GM plants, not intended for human consumption, migrate to conventional crops, and are unintentionally consumed by humans. Environmental concerns include transferring the engineered genes into wild population, persistence of the gene after the GMO has been harvested, biodiversity loss, and the stability of the gene. So the question is, are these foods safe? And only 37% of consumers feel that these foods are safe. However, 88% of scientists say that genetically modified foods are safe. As I mentioned before, genetically modified foods are regulated by all three federal agencies. USDA's role is to ensure the safety of GMOs related to plant health. The EPA regulates any GMO that contains a pesticide as part of its genetic makeup. The FDA regulates the safety of all GM crops that are consumed by people or animals. Now let's look at the biotech crops production in the world. In 2017, 24 countries, including 19 developing and 5 industrialized countries, planted biotech crops. The 10 top countries cultivated biotech crops on 186.1 million hectares, and that was 98% of global total biotech crops production area. And there is a table that lists these 10 top countries and their production. And you can see on the graph on the right how the production was growing throughout the years since 1996 to 2017. And you can see how the growth slowed down in recent years. Now let's look at the biotech crop production in the US. The biggest use of GMO technology has been in agricultural crops. At least 90% of soy, cotton, canola, corn, and sugar beets sold in the United States have been genetically modified. The figure on the left illustrates the biotech crops planted in the US in 2017. The figure on the right shows adoption of genetically engineered crops in the United States from 1996 to 2018. So far, the US has approved 197 single trait events in 19 crop species since 1996, and they are listed in the text box on the bottom right. In summary, the market on genetically altered foods is growing, as it was shown in the presentation. The United States is the biggest producer of biotech crops. Today, up to 70% of processed foods in the United States contain genetically modified organisms. Genetically modified foods must go through a strict assessment process before they are approved, so they should be safe. However, long-term effects of the biotech foods remain to be seen. Despite the criticisms and concerns, genetically modified foods can be the answer to increasing agricultural difficulties caused by the changing weather related to the climate change. And this is the reference list. If someone would like to look more into GM foods, please review those resources. Thank you.